For this next unit, we are going to be focusing on the graphs of our trig functions, and specifically sine and cosine. So to start with, we need to learn several new vocabulary words. So our first one is a periodic function. And this is a function that repeats a pattern of y values at regular intervals. And it has to be parallel to the x-axis. So that repeating pattern has to be horizontal. So if it's on a diagonal or vertical, it doesn't count as a periodic function. And then within our periodic function, we refer to a cycle as one complete pattern. And within our function, we could have different shapes that are the cycle. So it just kind of depends on what we see first. So as we're looking at this example, this is a periodic function because I can see this repeating pattern happening over our horizontal axis. So if I wanted to, I could pick one point here, and if I follow this, it's going to start to repeat after I hit that point. So that could be a cycle. Or if I happen to notice that something is starting here, and then I'm following this pattern. So again, if I kind of cut this out or copy and paste it and I moved it either forwards or backwards, it would fit perfectly on the next piece. So that's what we're looking at when we call the cycle. So depending on what we see first or what our questions are asking us, what our cycle looks like could be different, but just know that it means that it's one pattern of what's repeating. Now what can't change is the length of that pattern. I'm talking about the horizontal length. So no matter which cycle we choose in a function, the period of that, which is what I'm referring to when I'm talking about the length, has to be the same. So if this is my cycle, if I count my horizontal length, so 1, 2, 3, 4, that means that the period for this function is 4. And it doesn't matter which cycle I use. So if I use this one, if I'm counting my horizontal distance, this would be 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so no matter what our cycle is, the period has to be the same within that function. And then when we were talking about the frequency, this is the number of cycles that we see in a given picture or over a given interval. So as I'm looking at this, if I'm trying to figure out how many cycles I have, I would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my frequency for this one, which I'm going to abbreviate that, would be 5, since I can see the same pattern repeating 5 times. Okay. So we're just going to do some practice of identifying the period of a function. So if you pause your video for these 4 problems, I would like you to just identify one cycle, and then once you have that identified, I want you to give me the horizontal length, so the period. Okay. All right, so if I'm going to choose my cycle, I'm going to pick this one. So my length would be 1, 2, 3, 4. So the period of my function is 4. Let's see here. So here could be a cycle. So if I'm counting my length, this would be 1, 2, 3 for the period. Now, if you picked a different cycle, that's fine, as long as your period is the same as mine. Okay. Now, as I look at this next one, I can't really see a repeating pattern. So that means that there's only one full cycle in this picture. So I'm going to choose from here to this point. So when I'm looking at this, my unit of measurement is half pi. So if I am getting my total length here, this should be at 2.5 pi for the period. So I can write that as 2.5 pi. Or if we prefer fractions, then this would be 5 pi over 2. Okay. And then for my last example, this could be a cycle, and I'm going from 0 to 6 for that horizontal length. So the period for this function, oh, that is not how you spell period, is going to be 6. Okay. Now again, for a function to be considered periodic, the pattern has to be repeating horizontally. So because this pattern and this one are repeating on a diagonal, these are not periodic. Okay. And then my last one is periodic since that pattern is repeating along that horizontal axis. And if I was trying to identify my period, and if I just pick this as my starting point, this would be 1 cycle. So this would be a length of 1, 2, 3, 4.